This episode is brought to you by Jinx, the superfood-powered dog kibble everyone's been talking about. See the results for yourself and try their 1-month transformation. Within the first few weeks, you'll see how Jinx can help with your dog's energy, mood, and even digestion. And it's all thanks to the high-quality ingredients they use, like organic chicken, Atlantic salmon, and grass-fed beef. Try the 1-month transformation today. Find Jinx in your local Walmart.
Listen to the 48 Hours podcast for shocking murder cases and compelling real-life dramas from one of television's most watched true crime shows. Go behind the scenes of each episode with award-winning CBS News correspondents and producers in Postmortem, a weekly deep dive. Listen to 48 Hours wherever you get your podcasts.
A note to listeners. The following podcast contains content that may not be suitable for all audiences. Discretion is advised.
You're dumping this huge bucket of mud and debris, and so Heath was hitting it with the hose, and I noticed something that just didn't look normal. And so I picked it up, and it was almost like a rubbery substance, and so I cleaned it off in the water and looked at it and immediately knew we had something.
And we went out there, we walked through the woods, and I felt this pressure around my neck. And I said, I feel like I'm being pushed first. And then I felt like I was being choked. And I kept feeling like something was pushing me and choking me. And I started crying. It was bizarre. And then I started crying and I started yelling.
I'd sent that photo to some of my friends that are dental surgeons, biologists, and everyone came back human tongue.
You are listening to Partners in True Crime. We are your hosts, Rob and Cindy Dorfman.
Before we dive into revealing what the results of what we found at Moxley Pond during our 2-day excavation, we just have a few programming notes for the holidays.
Today will be the last podcast for this year. New episodes will start again on January 6th, 2023. But starting December 24th, as promised, the first installment of the videos we took during the excavation week at Moxley Pond will be available on our website.
Today we have Toby Thomas on the podcast. Toby is the owner of Battlesprings Ranch, and he's been a stalwart supporter of this case since he learned that his property could be a potential dumping ground for human remains.
This case has a lot of civilian angels circling above, who help in a variety of ways, and Toby and his family have definitely earned their wings in that regard. The amount of time and money he has devoted to helping to find answers to what happened to Molly and Colt is truly inspiring to us.
The first part of our discussion with Toby was recorded live from his Battlesprings Ranch, and Toby tells us what he thought about the excavation on his property and what we found there.
So we're here with Toby Thomas. We are on Battlesprings Ranch. We've been here for a few days now. We're really thankful to have Toby with us. Toby, if you haven't listened to the podcast lately, Toby's ranch was the site of Moxley Pond. It's where that is located, where a host of things have happened at Moxley Pond. Errand butt dial from Colby Barrack's cell phone. We were here on the television show for Oxygen when we were looking at it as a possible dumping ground for Molly and Colt's bodies. So it's a significant location because it's literally perpendicular to Long Hollow Road. Like if you go out his gate is facing Long Hollow Road. So it's basically ground zero for this case. I just want to thank Toby for allowing us to be here on his beautiful Battlesprings Ranch, which, if just to give you a visual of what it's like, if you're a Yellowstone fan, this is Yellowstone in Oklahoma.
Much. Yes, it is.
It is pretty amazing.
It's amazing.
He's developed us into this sanctuary for a bunch of different things, animals and people and veterans. Mm-hmm. So it's an amazing place. Toby is an amazing individual, and we're glad to have him as part of our team on this case. And so, Toby, tell me a little bit about what this week has been like.
It's been really good. It's been very emotional. It's been definitely a lot of work. I still think I have mud underneath my fingernails, which is good. Having you guys come in, first off, it was awesome to finally meet y'all in person, right? And the people behind the podcast are just as awesome as the people in person on the podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And you brought an amazing team. Maureen, her team, I mean, everyone out here has been great. You know, it wasn't really for sure how in depth we were going to go, but we set up the construction site to go as deep as anyone wanted to. It was very exciting. It's kind of like trying to finally figure out a puzzle piece without all the pieces. So it's been a lot of fun working with you guys.
Yeah, I would say it's almost been like a treasure hunt
Very much so.
For a lack of a better term.
Yeah, but it's been a very emotional treasure hunt for us to watch Paula go through this and then meet her son Heath, and then Toby and his family and his wife are amazing people. I just was really moved by all of the people coming together with this one goal to find these kids and to help this family. And it was very moving to see how everybody just jumped in there, got in the mud. I mean, Toby was covered from head to toe. Maureen was covered from head to toe. Nobody cared. Everybody was just jumping in there, and Heath's wife, everyone. That was pretty awesome to see.
And you brought up a good point with having the family here too, right? So that turns a whole different dynamic, because projects I work on, there's most of the time they're emotional just because you're having fun, you want to accomplish a goal, but also keeping in mind while we're excavating and looking for clues and potentially cadaver, that the family might see that too. So there's an interesting dynamic of you're trying to get something done, but you're also trying to be very cognizant of those around you and their feelings as well.
Yeah.
What I also think is interesting is because we have a normal kind of CSI technical excavations, you wouldn't have the family members here.
No.
But because Paula has been doing these searches from day one, she's been organizing it. She knows all the facts of this case. She knows all the theories. She knows the possibilities of what she might find based upon what the treatment of their bodies, based upon a myriad of theories of how they were disposed of. She can see through that and get to the goal. So it was really important to understand that, because you're sitting there and she's, as we're doing all this dirty work and excavation being led by a retired FBI agent and also a current CSI tech, Cheryl McCullum, Mac as we like to call her.
She's awesome.
And I'm sure our audience are very familiar with Cheryl McCullum and Maureen O'Connell, because they're always at CrimeCon. They're on all the television shows. And Mac works with Nancy Grace all the time. It was interesting to see how everything played out. And it was a very eventful week. And I want to start off with the first night we were here, because we weren't expecting that.
No,
So
we were not.
I'm gonna let Toby to tee that up, because
I'll tee it up and then pass it over.
Okay, thanks.
So on episode 17 of your podcast, I told you a little bit about some experiences I had out here in a certain area where we'd found a shirt, and we had some metal detector anomalies, I guess you could say, and that had a woman that kind of became possessed, gave us, in my belief, I know it sounds crazy, but gave us some clues. And that is why that we were digging in that hole, because those clues also added up with some of the other theories and butt dials that you mentioned. That night, at probably like 8 or 9 o'clock, sun had gone down, and I asked the team if they wanted to go to a spooky place, and they said yes. And so I took that old metal detector, and I'm going to tee it off to you, Cindy.
I've mentioned before that I've had a lot of psychic experiences, and supernatural things have happened, especially when we're doing shows like this. So I really didn't expect anything to happen, because I had a camera, and usually when I have a camera, nothing happens. And we got out there, it was really, really dark, and it was really, really woodsy. And the first thing I felt when I got out of the car was a very heavy, heavy energy. And I said to Rob, I go, uh-oh, because that's how I know when I get goosebumps on the back of my neck that something's going to happen. And we went out there, we walked through the woods, and I felt this pressure around my neck. And I said, I feel like I'm being pushed first. And then I felt like I was being choked. And I kept feeling like something was pushing me and choking me. And I started crying. It was bizarre. And then I started crying and I started yelling. And it's embarrassing now, like thinking about it. But at the time, it was real to me.
You were also, it looked like you were like throwing up.
I felt like I was going to throw up. I felt like I needed to pull something out of my throat. Like somebody was choking me. Like I just wanted it to come out of me. So whether it was screaming or choking or coughing, or I thought I was going to throw up. It was really a horrifying experience, to be honest. I was really scared, and I haven't had an experience like that in a long time, where I could feel the entity there. I mean, there's an entity there. I don't know who it is. I don't know what it is, but there's definitely something there that physically I could feel that was making me react physically. You can't explain it. I can't explain it. I have no idea. I just know what I experienced, and it was overwhelming. And it took me like 24 hours to kind of get over it.
Yeah, initially I thought, because you have allergies.
Right.
And at first I thought you were having an allergy attack, because there's so many animals out here in the woods and everything's getting kicked up. And then at one point when you started holding your throat and you were choking, that's when I realized something was really wrong.
So I think I actually looked at you and was like, hey, dude, you need to go on this right now.
But it was pitch dark. I mean, and I'm always like, everyone was looking towards the front, and you couldn't see her. It was very dark. And so I'm like, well, if everyone's looking this way, no one's looking behind us. Like, I better look behind us. Because I've never been in this area. I mean, I've been here, but I've never been here at night.
Yeah.
And it's like,
it's a little spooky at night.
And then we went there during the day. It was amazed how close we are to the house, how close we are to the Moxley Pond. Because it's like when we were driving, you don't have not familiar with it, no perception. So it was kind of interesting. So when I finally turned around and I saw you, said, "Come on over here, Rob." I think you know it. I'm like, "Oh my God, what's going on?"
Yeah, it was scary.
And it took you were in tears and you were choking and you really couldn't talk to me. And I could tell that you were experiencing something. I don't know what it was.
It was just overwhelming. I just wanted to get it out of me. I don't know if that makes sense, but it was like the energy had to come out of me in any way. I just wanted it away from me and out of me. I also kept getting a really thick metal chain. I kept seeing like a big metal chain. I don't know what it is. I wasn't physically there. I just could feel it and I'd hear it. But I also want to say this. Battlesprings Ranch is one of the most peaceful places I've ever been. It feels like it has a bubble over it. It feels like it's protected. It's a very spiritual place. I don't think that energy that's there has anything to do with this ranch at all. I think it has to do with one incident that happened in that spot, because I haven't felt anything like that. We've been all over this ranch now, and I haven't felt anything like that again. It's just that one spot, and I thought it was interesting that someone else had similar experience in that exact same spot.
Yeah, no, there's been multiple people have gone down there that have had a very similar experience. The choking, it can make you very emotional, especially if you're sensitive to those things. And to the listeners too, I wasn't one of these guys that grew up as like a ghost hunter or believed in the boogeyman's going to come out or anything like that. So whenever I had my experience, for me, it felt like I was almost like a curtain had been opened, and I was like, okay, there's more to this world than what we see. It's interesting. I cannot explain it.
It was a hell of a way to kick off the week, because I think we were only here a couple hours before that happened. We got here, it was dark when we got here, and then we had a little food, and then we're like, hey, you guys want to go out? And then, so that was
and the metal detector that we took was chirping back, and we asked questions. I mean, it's and it doesn't happen anywhere else in the ranch except there.
It's true.
I wonder if there's a metal chain buried under there. I saw it so clearly. Like, I was like, I could see it.
Well, the problem is it wasn't going off when you're hovering it over the ground. It only goes off when you point it to the sky, because that's when, like, after we left, I was holding on to it. I was the last person to leave, and it was chirping all the way out because I had it pointed straight up.
And you don't wear anything on
I don't wear. I have the only metal I have on is my ring, and I wasn't holding it in that hand. So anyway, that was a great way to start the week. Start off with the first day of the excavation. Let's just start off by saying, Toby, why don't you tell us what you brought in for this? Because we had this meeting like a few months ago. We had a Zoom call with Maureen O'Connell and Cheryl McCollum and Paula, Cindy, and I decide if we even should do something like this. And then now that we decided to do it, what we needed to do it. And they were really good. Cheryl and Maureen would say, well, we're going to need this. We're going to need these scrims. We're going to do this. Sifting boxes and stuff. And then we showed up, and Toby only does things one way, the right way. So tell us what you brought in for this excavation.
Yeah, we brought in, we don't go small typically, do we? So we brought in a very large excavator. Part of the reason for the size of that was to be able to reach into all the areas that we're going to be digging. We had our skid steers. We had a 6-inch pump that's like 1,600 GPM per minute. And then we brought another 2-inch trash pump so that we could bring water from the other side of the dam we created, so water wouldn't go back into the hole, to be able to wash out all the material that we pulled out of the hole. Built screens. We had tarps. I mean, I think from a private operation, I think it was pretty well put together.
I know when Cheryl walked down there, she was very impressed, and she does this on a daily basis. And she goes, "You guys are a top-notch organization here." So
awesome.
it was. She was
She
very
said it
impressed.
multiple times.
Multiple
Both
times.
Maureen and her.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was fantastic.
Yeah, we also had some of our friends here too that are, we had one of my buddies, Brian Trotter, who's a Navy SEAL. He's not only operator in that way, but he's an amazing equipment operator. So he kind of manned our equipment, and he can magic. It's like him dancing on an excavator, basically, is the way he operates.
The level of finesse that guy had with that excavator was pretty amazing. He was like, all right, we're just a little touch here, a little touch there. I mean, he was like jumping in there and just pulling stuff out of the earth and that pond and laying it out and putting it in exactly the right place that Cheryl and Maureen wanted him to do it. So, and like dumping it slowly so we could see all the sediment and all the crap coming out of it, so we can kind of see if there's anything falling, and then we would rake through it. We've done a lot of stuff, but we've never done anything like this. We've done dives and stuff like that. Day one was a lot.
It was a lot of effort and a lot of work, and everybody was really excited, and I felt like as the day was going by and we weren't finding anything, everybody was getting frustrated.
Oh, we were finding things, but we weren't finding what we needed to find. We were finding turtle shells. We were finding, but the deeper we got, it got more interesting.
I would say that first day too, during the dig, it's kind of like, you start a sporting event. Everyone's like riled up, and you're coming out on the field and you're high-fiving, and every little thing that comes out, you're like, what is this? What is that? What is that? And as the day went on, and you're not finding anything of substance, right? It becomes a little emotional too, because you're like, okay, well, we're ready to find something. I mean, these were big scoops. I mean, I would say like 500 pounds of dirt every time we pulled out something. And to have like negative hits was, it kind of like drains you a little bit emotionally too.
Yeah.
And every once in a while you could see someone pick something up off the ground. You're like, and everyone kind of stopped and looked. And I remember Bonnie, she was the eagle eye amongst us.
Oh, for sure.
Heath's wife, Bonnie. She was finding all these things that look like teeth. These little, they didn't look like rocks. They look like teeth. And so that was really interesting too.
Well, and two, if you want to talk about, what a bone might look like in water over time, and all the debris we had in there, I swear every single thing that came out of there looked like a black bone. You grab it and you're like, okay, this is it. And then we've got beavers too, right? And they'll chew on those sticks and make them straight. And you're like, okay, there's a bone. And obviously it's not.
And then throw in the bamboo.
Yes, the bamboo.
You have tons of bamboo in there too, mashed down there, aged, and silt and all that kind of the mud and stuff like that. That kind of looks like a bone when you see them like that.
I can't tell you how many times. It's kind of like if you've ever been to a roulette table and put on 33 red, right? And it lands on 32 black every single time. It's just right there, and you see it kind of tripling over and then dropping, and you're like, okay, we missed it again.
Yeah.
Have you ever done anything like that before?
Like this? Not to this scale at all. I love solving puzzles, and I love treasure hunting. Nothing to this degree. And that's part of the reason that we waited, because I did not have good confidence in me and my buddy's ability to do this correctly. And that's one of the things that we talked about when you first called, is that I needed a team and someone that were experts to do this, that could direct us, that we could be a part of. And y'all certainly brought it.
Yeah, Maureen and Mac are amazing. As the day progressed and we didn't find anything, when we went down there on the second day, how were you feeling?
Once we started saying, okay, we're still going, like, this is not over. Then my mind started going, okay, I started trying to solve my little problem, right? So why didn't we have material? Why didn't we didn't see trash. We didn't see anything. And then I was thinking about it, and back in 2020, we had a large beaver dam. And it's kind of one of the jokes around here. If you have land, like, beavers are not your favorite friends, especially if you have water.
No.
And so these beavers had built a 3-foot dam on the North Lake that feeds right into this spillway into the South Lake. And we decided to destroy it because it was starting to flood everything. So we took a skid steer in there and busted that dam. So we had 3 feet of water times 100 acres going through that. I mean, millions of gallons pushing material in there. And then it started making sense. Okay, there's a large layer of sediment here that we haven't even scraped the top off of.
Day 2, we just knew that we had to keep on digging. What we discovered is, as we were digging deeper, things seemed more preserved, and we started finding stuff. It's almost like, and then the water was colder, and the silt was finer, and it was almost like everything looked more preserved. And we started seeing fish, dead fish.
Even fish that were alive.
Some fish that were alive, some that were dead, that were packed in there, that could have been there for years, that they weren't decomped.
Eaten. Nothing had happened to them.
And they weren't decomped.
And I want to get into that really detailed whenever you're ready to talk about that, because that is a huge clue into what we're doing and the item that we found.
Yeah.
So then we found something really interesting, which was a zip tie.
That was really interesting.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
The zip tie was really crazy. And talking to Mac, because she wasn't here, unfortunately, when we found that, she was like silent for a second. What? You found a zip tie? That's interesting.
A cut zip tie.
And we put it around I have pretty small wrists, and we put it around my wrist, and it fit totally, like there was space, like it was comfortable. And Maureen has bigger wrists, and she put it around her wrists, and it fit her too. So it could have been for a man or a woman. Molly had small wrists, so we don't know, but it did look like it could fit loosely around someone's wrist.
I don't know who said it that day, but they say when you zip tie something, and I know when I zip tie something, it's small. You zip it, and then where the clamp and the little alligator teeth, where you zip it to make something tight. This was loose.
Well, or it was around something that was that size. And
Yeah.
made
That's
it
what I'm
tight
saying.
At the time. Yes.
Yeah. But it, like the end of it, there was only a little bit of it, so it could have been something that was used to bind someone's wrists.
And being on a ranch, my first thing is I'm trying to answer each one of these questions, right? So whose beer can is that? Well, actually in 2019, I liked Bud Light, right? We found the arrow, right? And I could date that to 2017 because one of my buddies shot an arrow into the water to shoot a gar and it got stuck, right? And those zip ties, though, we have zip ties out here. I mean, if you're on a ranch, if you're working, you use zip ties for lots of things. They're great instruments. I can't say that I've used zip ties on the north side of this property. The only time we've used them, those particular type of zip ties, were at the gate for a veterans event where we put a bunch of flags up. So how that zip tie got there is still a mystery to me.
And so deep.
It's 6 feet deep, right? 6-7 feet deep in the mud.
Yeah.
So it also tells you how many layers are there. I mean, that 2019 beer was under like 6 feet of silt.
Right. That's why I was saying, like, that's where we got. Yeah. After one day of digging, we got down to 2019. Well, for 3 years ago.
Right.
So one day of digging was 3 years worth of stuff. So, and then day 2, we got down a little further.
Yeah.
So.
And that bass. So I want to talk about that bass specific breed of fish. So in this hole, the only time it has air in it is if there's water spilling into it, right? So it's a non-oxygenated area. So the only fish that can survive in that are localized are alligator gar and catfish. And we found some catfish and they were alive, right? And I think we had taken those off the top. This bass was under about 6 feet of sediment and was completely, I mean, it was like it just died. And when it came out, I picked it up and lipped it. That's what we call it fishing, like you're taking a fishing picture. Mouth opened up, there's no rigor mortis. I can specifically talk about that bass because we've had a drought here for the last really about 2 years. And there's not been any water that has gone from the North Lake through that spillway in 2 years, which means that bass died at least 2 years ago and was completely intact, no decomp, mouth could open. And at the time, it didn't really register to me, but I was like, man, this is weird. Like, how is this even here? And I dropped it and put it and let it flow down. That'll be interesting to talk about.
Yeah, let's talk about it now. Let's talk about the temperature of the water, the silt, because it's like as we got deeper into this hole in this pond, we started feeling energy. We started feeling it as we started pulling things out of it.
Yeah, and one of the things that Cheryl had said that started clicking is I think she noticed right away, like, this is a bog type condition. She told me, she's like, hey, can you go get a cooler? I need to put some water in this because if we do have any organic material, it will immediately start to decompose because this is bog-like condition. So to your listeners, if you look at Scotland, so in Scotland, they're finding mummies basically they're thousands of years old that are not even decomposed. And part of the reason that is that you've got in the spring water, I'd say that water's probably 40, 45 degrees.
Yeah, it was cold.
Right? Yeah.
It was cold.
And then you've got zero oxygen. You've got a large amount of silt on top of it. So those conditions, it's like a refrigerator. I mean, I think it's even better than a refrigerator.
Yeah.
And so we're finding stuff. We're finding tissue from a fish that it shouldn't. I mean, that stuff should be done in a week.
Well, that bass should have been decomposed.
Oh, it should have been decomposed in a week.
Right. And if it's been there for 2 years, it looked like it was like it just was put in there. Yeah. And that was really interesting to me. I mean, I would love to talk to a specialist in bogs because, I mean, that's fascinating. Because, like he's saying, like as we went deeper and deeper, things started to be more preserved, which we didn't expect. We didn't expect that. I mean, you and I didn't.
No.
We didn't know.
No, I mean, listen, the biggest thing is when I talked to Cheryl McCollum, the beginning of the day, we did a little interview, and she said, listen, whatever happens today, it's all good news. Because if we find something, that's good news. If we don't find something, that's good news too, because what it does is it eliminates a location.
Absolutely.
So you come away with information. Either way, you're going to come away with information. We always feel empowered by that, but also we all want to find something.
Of course.
After 9.5 years, we want to find something. We need to find something that's going to help resolve this case, which has been lingering for so long. That was really interesting to find that out. After the end of day one, when we weren't happy with the results of what we did and we didn't feel like the dogs really gave us a good solid answer on anything, first thing we did was like, we need to get another set of dogs. Mm-hmm. So Toby, you started calling your people. Mm-hmm. Paula started rifling through her contacts. Mm-hmm. And keep in mind now, we're in rural Oklahoma.
Yes, we are.
Okay, this is not like calling Domino's, and asking for a cadaver dog. Mm-hmm. It takes a lot of work. Paula was able to find somebody, but they were like 3 hours north of us. Mm-hmm. She told him the whole thing and everything. He didn't know anything about the case or anything. He said, I'll call you back in a half hour and let you know if I'm coming. Called out, said, I'll come down. The next morning, when he showed up, Toby and I were talking to him, and this guy rolled up, and he's got 2 Belgian Malinois. First thing he said, he goes, Well, just so you know, let me just tell you what I found out before we even let the dogs out. I've researched this ranch. I've researched the case. I know the agriculture in this area. I know the wind patterns in this area. I know the history of this ranch.
Studied like the hydrology or whatever.
The hydrology
water goes
of where the
through.
water goes. Both Toby and I go, I think we got the right guy.
Oh, this guy was legit. He was telling me stuff about history of the ranch that I didn't even know. And that's pretty hard to do, to be honest, because I love studying history about this place.
It was great. So, and then he also said, well, if I do find something, who do we bring it to? And I said, well, OSBI is looking into this case. I think they would be the first point and do it. He goes, hopefully we find something and you can write a report and stuff like that. First things first.
And tell them about the rattlesnake, too.
Oh, yeah. So, of course, wait. I'm going to preface this by saying that Rob attracts a lot of snakes. And as we are getting out of the truck, I hear Toby's like,
well, we were talking to the dog handler.
Yeah, we're having a little team meeting.
We get out of the truck, and the dogs are there, the dog handler, everybody's talking about what the plan is going to be, and Rob steps forward, and Toby's like,
No, I was talking to the guy, and he interrupts me, and I was like, I'm like, oh, okay, what do you have to say? And he's like going, look down. And like that, and there's a little pygmy rattlesnake that's like right next to my foot.
Yeah. So that's, and I just say that because these are not the easiest conditions to work in. I mean, we're working around this stuff, right? So we're in the mud, we're in the muck, we're tromping through the forest, and there's lots of things that bite.
Yeah, so, I've got tons of bites on me from God only knows what. I have no idea what bit me yesterday.
Yeah. So that's how we started day 2. Mm-hmm. So, but then the dog handler, he did his work and he brought his dog out, and it was a totally different experience. He didn't really even have to talk to his dog.
No, this guy's legit.
These dogs, it was like watching a special forces dog. It's like I keep on saying, we've worked with Belgian Malinois before, and I always say to them, I go, you can actually see them thinking.
Oh, they're so smart.
It's like they don't even look like an animal. They look like almost like a robot dog. They just sit there and they're like.
And that guy was connected to those dogs.
Mm-hmm.
You could see that there was a connection to those. He named his company after his first dog that passed away, and this is a guy that loves his animals.
Oh yeah.
And he's well trained. He's done all his own training as far as he paid for himself to go out to Colorado to the best schools, and also the cadaver farm in University of Tennessee. And he can tell you about the chemicals, how the body decomposes, and what the dog is going to smell. So we really felt like we got the right guy.
He also does a lot of work with OSBI and BIA. So he does have a lot of experience with cadavers and human remains.
Yeah, he actually told me that he travels around the country and he locates Native American burials that are ancient, as well as slavery burials.
Oh, wow.
He's been up on the East Coast and actually found some old burial sites and helped closure for families from 100 years ago.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, he specialized in historical clandestine graves.
Yeah.
So we felt like we really got the right guy. Mm-hmm. So he's running around, the dog's running around, I'd say within like maybe 10 minutes. Mm-hmm. 10 minutes, and I look at him, and I don't see any kind of hard, fast indication. He lets his dog go, and it was about 10 minutes, and then I look up at him. I don't see any kind of indication or anything like that, and he comes up and talks to us, and he goes, yeah, it's here.
Yeah, 100%.
100% there's remains. I got to write up a report. We're like, this was like 10 o'clock in the morning, and we're like, all right, let's get back to work.
Yeah, heck yeah.
Get back in the mud.
Right in the heart.
Get back in the mud. So we started digging again. We started digging, hosing down, and we got into a rhythm.
This episode is brought to you by Jinx, the superfood-powered dog kibble everyone's been talking about. See the results for yourself and try their 1-month transformation. Within the first few weeks, you'll see how Jinx can help with your dog's energy, mood, and even digestion. And it's all thanks to the high-quality ingredients they use, like organic chicken, Atlantic salmon, and grass-fed beef. Try the 1-month transformation today. Find Jinx in your local Walmart.
Inspired by the life of the savvy and ambitious Colombian businesswoman Griselda Blanco comes a new Netflix original limited series. Griselda tells the story of a devoted mother who, with her lethal blend of charm and relentless savagery, creates one of the most powerful cartels in history. Witness Sofia Vergara's captivating transformation into the godmother of the underworld. Griselda, streaming January 25th, only on Netflix.
Well, and this guy was so good. So, too, while y'all started digging, that dog was interested in bamboo that's just it's just up the hill from the hole. And so he and I went through this bamboo, and we spent probably 2 hours going through this bamboo. And when it came out, we ended up on this south side of our dig site where the water was coming out over the dam that we built. And the dog immediately hit on that water coming out of the hose. And he's like, Toby, this is a hard hit. Like I'm going to write a report that says there's 100% human remains in this property or in this little spot.
I mean, the other dogs did do the same thing with the bamboo. There definitely was something with the bamboo. Those other dogs just ran straight into the bamboo, and maybe they didn't indicate the way the handler was used to them indicating. But working with dogs before, I was watching them, and those first dogs also had similar behavior around the bamboo and the same hole that the Belgian Malinois hit on.
Well, and he actually explained that. So what bamboo is pretty cool. So it's kind of like aspen trees. So bamboo, their root system actually connects. So it's actually a huge living organism. And what he's explaining is that bamboo is getting water from this hole. And that cadaver, I guess it's a scent or there's molecules or there's a scientific name for it, would actually be absorbed into those trees. So those trees would hit. And that's the reason I think a lot of dogs we've had here have gone through there and have not hard alerted, but they've changed their mannerisms.
And they kept going back to the bamboo. Yeah. All of them. Yeah. All the dogs kept going straight for the bamboo.
Because it flows right up the bamboo and out into the air.
Exactly. Yeah. He did write a report that there are human remains in that hole.
Exactly.
So how did that make you feel, Toby?
Oh, man. I mean, it was like, all right, let's do this. We know we're good. We know we're here for a reason, right? And let's get this done.
Let's kind of fast forward here a little bit, because then
there was just this invigoration of everybody's spirit was like, let's go. And everybody was back into the mud. The excavator was going. Everybody was moving in a rhythm. And then Maureen was like, I need to take a break. I'm like, I got to take a break. So we went up to the house.
I went with you.
I think you came up there with us. Toby stayed down at the hole with the excavator, and Brian and Bonnie and Heath.
And our dog handler was there as well.
Paula was with us, yeah. So we're up here, and we were making some lunch or something, and then all of a sudden Maureen's like, oh, we got to go right now. Something's wrong. They found something. They found something. And we were like, oh my God. So we all ran back down there and
tell us,
what is it? What happened, Toby?
And I don't really know how to explain it, to be honest with you. So you're dumping this huge bucket of mud and debris. And so Heath was hitting it with the hose, and I noticed something that just didn't look normal. And so I picked it up, and it was almost like a rubbery substance. And so I cleaned it off in the water and looked at it, and immediately knew we had something. To give it a description, it looked like a human tongue to me. And this is going to sound really strange for people listening right now until we kind of explain how that could even be. So I called Brian Trotter over, who's Navy SEAL and smart dude. And I was like, dude, what is this? And he's like, I think you got something. So I waved over to the dog handler, and I was like, hey, dude, check this out. And he immediately was like, okay, yeah, we need to. He pulled out a $1 bill for scale, took a photo, sent it to the medical examiner. And meanwhile, I'm fast dialing Maureen, and her phone went straight to voicemail. So I called Paula. I was like, y'all get your tails down here right now. Dog handler sent it to the medical examiner, and her first response was, wow, that's weird.
And she said, I need to see that in person.
Yeah. When y'all walk down, right, I'm obviously my posture has changed a little bit.
Well, you're all standing around the cooler where we had the pond water in to preserve anything we found, and it was laying on the top. And I'm looking at this thing, and if you're looking at it from the top, it looks like it could be almost like a piece of coral, like a rock, and so it had like a little. But with that, those holes are taste buds. Yeah, they're taste buds, and you can see it's a muscle. It's like, because the tongue is a muscle. It's not.
It looked like if you touched it, at first I thought it would kind of fall apart, right? If you touched it.
Almost looks like a fungus.
Right, that's what I thought. I would be like, if you squished it down, it would kind of disintegrate. But it didn't.
No.
It's like fatty. It's like muscle, like tissue.
It's
and then when you look at it, it does look like the shape of a tongue, a human tongue, because animal tongues don't look like that.
No, and we walked through that too. I mean, whenever I found something like that, and while y'all are walking down, I'm like, okay, I don't want to set everyone off, right? So I'm going through my mind every single species of animal that's here and what their tongue looks like, right? So you've got deer, you've got coyotes, you've got dogs, you've got cats, you've got mountain lions, you've got beavers, you've got otters. None of those tongues look like that. Then I started going through, okay, do fish have tongues? They do, but they're kind of like cartilagey tongue. Birds don't have tongues like that, right? The only species of animal on this property that I know that has a tongue like that is human.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It was bizarre.
Yeah.
And so then we had to call the medical examiner in Oklahoma City. They had to send someone out here.
Well, first of all, they're like, all right, well, they said, we'll drive it up here.
Yeah.
And we're like,
no,
we're not leaving.
Yeah.
This thing, you guys have to come pick it up. We were even thinking about driving in the car, following behind, because as we know, in this case, a lot of evidence has been misplaced and lost over the years, and we spent all this time, money, and effort to do something like this. We didn't want this one to slip through the cracks.
There's a level of paranoia with this right now that I think is deserved, to be honest with you.
Yeah, because the place where I had the supernatural experience is where Toby found the shirt, the T-shirt.
Yeah, that no longer exists, right?
And no longer exists. Unfortunately, Paula had given it to former law enforcement in Love County. They lost it, which is unfortunate because that shirt could have had some kind of evidence that could have...
It could have, and maybe it didn't, but we'll never know.
Exactly.
That's the thing. We don't know.
Well, and the dog handler, too, as soon as we found that, he's like, okay, I want to walk all through these woods over here because if there was something there, and we know that there was, an animal may have pulled a piece of that out and taken it through the woods. And so he wants to come back. He's so interested in what are in those woods. And he and I both walked them. And honestly, it's kind of like it's like a boneyard. I mean, it's near the waters where animals like to go to pass away.
Toby, we walk outside your front door. We found a deer hoof, bones.
Yeah.
What else was it over there? It was
A
like,
bunch of stuff.
it's just like pieces of animals laying all over the place. I'm like,
It's we have abundant nature here.
exactly.
And nature takes its course sometimes.
Exactly.
All the time, actually.
But the fact that this material or possible tongue was so preserved, which was really interesting to me, the fact that it could be in that form and had not disintegrated or decomposed or...
I mean, Cindy, if you had called me on the phone and said, I found a human tongue in this pond, I would say, you are absolutely out of your mind. There's no way. But now we look at the science part of it. We look at that bass that has been preserved. And we've got an area that is an actual bog. I know there's some scientific word of why it works that way. It absolutely could be preserved. And that's what we think we've got.
What was interesting, too, is because, was it this morning that we talked to one of the law enforcement or was it that day that we were talking? I can't even remember what day it is.
Yeah, I know.
But when we were telling him what we were finding, he said, "You found a tongue?" And then we said, "We found zip tie, cut zip tie." The pregnant pause, the silence on the phone when he heard the zip tie, he just was like, "Oh, I got to call my captain," you know. So we set in motion a lot of things, calling the ME's office, calling our contact who works with the OSBI, but it was incredible.
And one of the things I found interesting too was that the handler I was with, the medical examiner that he had sent that picture to, and could not ID that over the phone. He said that's pretty uncommon. And I know Paula had sent her bones before, and she immediately comes back and says, "Hey, this is what that is. It's a turtle shell, it's a deer leg, whatever it might be." This one I think was interesting enough that there was not able to do a positive ID over a photo that they wanted to put under a microscope. So I think that alone it's interesting, and I think we're going to find out soon.
Yeah. And so the medical examiner's office came, and we stood around him like a pack of wolves.
And they came that day. They
They
didn't screw around on us at all.
No. They came a couple hours later, and we filmed the nice man that came because he was very nice.
He was very nice. And I said, "Listen, don't take this the wrong way." He says, "But we've had a history with this case and evidence. We're going to videotape this. We're going to ask you a lot of questions. The questions are how this is going to be handled, what you're going to do with it today, where you're going with it, when you're bringing it actually to the pathologist."
This guy was so awesome. He even told us where his wife worked. Right? So this guy's like, "Hey, look, I'm on your level. Like, hey."
Exactly. He goes, "I'm aware of this case. I'm aware of that pond. I live in Ardmore." And he couldn't have been nicer. Now it's at the ME's office, and pathologists, as we speak, are probably looking at it. And Toby keeps on looking at his phone to see if we get a phone call.
Yeah.
Because we're very excited to find out what this is. And regardless, I feel like, this is just the beginning, because this is what's going to happen, what we're told. If it is human remains, then it's not our scene anymore.
Yeah, it's a whole different escalation. And you want to talk about what that might look like?
Yeah, I mean, basically what we've been told is that if it is designated as human remains, we can't dig anymore. We can't even go down there.
And we did stop. And we did stop. And we got advice from, pretty much every person that we talked to as law enforcement, as well as the medical examiner investigator that picked it up. Like, hey guys, that was a proper thing to do.
So now we're kind of like in détente, a big pause.
Well, and let's talk too about why did we stop? Like, why does that make sense that we stopped digging? Because obviously we might have found a clue. You might think, okay, well, let's dig more. Let's find everything.
Yeah, because right now we're doing this privately. Okay, and we don't want to obstruct anything. And that's been the goal in this, with this whole investigation from the beginning. Even Paula, I mean, she would go off and do things early on, and she wasn't obstructive. If she found something, first thing she'd do is call OSBI, she'd call law enforcement, she'd hand over evidence. I mean, she wants to do everything above board, and so do we. And so we had to stop as much as we wanted to continue to dig, because we're
Convinced there's something else down there.
I mean, we're so
I am
freaking
convinced.
curious.
Well, and the dogs are convinced. I mean, that is our fourth dog that is hit on positive human remains in that hole. There's something there. We might have found a piece of it. So, I mean, if that is human remains, which, and I did send a photo to a surgical dentist friend of mine, and I didn't tell him anything about it. It's like, hey, what is this? He goes, that's human tongue. So I called him like, hey, you're good with that? And he's like, oh, 100%, that's human tongue. I work in mouse every single day for the last 30 years. Human tongue. If we do find out that that's positively identified as a human tongue, that means that there might be other preserved things there, which, it sounds a little bit difficult to talk about or listen to in this way, but you may have a body down there. You may have a body down there that has shown cuts, torture, restraint. Why is the tongue removed? That might be something that people want to know too. I mean, we've got some theories on that. There's 3 that we've come up with.
Yeah. I mean, your imagination can run wild with those theories on why there would be a tongue there. It's all strange, but it's good strange. I honestly was it was like 90% that we weren't going to find anything, 10% we might find something. Maybe even less than that, maybe like 5%. The fact that we're having this conversation and that there's a piece of something underneath a microscope in front of a pathologist right now, to me, that's a huge victory. In this case.
Well, and not only that, so it sounds like from the activity that you've got the medical examiner involved, you've got OSBI involved, they've been involved, right? You've got other organizations that are kind of doing some overwatch, so I think we kind of shook a bush again, right? And more exposure to this and more resources to this.
That's exciting for this case. It's exciting for what we tried to do.
So now we just have to wait.
We do have to wait. So.
And to your listeners right now, we are waiting on a phone call that's supposed to be made today, and it is 4:30 p.m. We're all sitting around very anxiously waiting for that phone call to confirm or deny what we got.
Exactly.
This is actually it.
This is actually it?
Yeah. Hold on one second. I'm going to put on speakerphone.
Perfect.
Just see. Hey, John, I've got you on speakerphone, buddy, and you're being recorded. If that's okay.
I was going to let you know they are taking that sample and they're breaking it down for histology so they can look at the cellular makeup under a microscope as soon as they get that done, so it may take a day or two, but you can probably go ahead and go on about your business.
Okay, so tell me what that means.
That means that it can take a day or two, but they have not determined that it is human or isn't. They're not willing to release whether it is or isn't, but you can probably they're just going to wait for histology to confirm 100%. They're not going to release anything until they know 100%. They're not going to speculate.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate that, because that'll set a lot of different wheels in motion.
Right, and that's what we wanted to kind of get you what we could without being pinned down to anything.
No, that's wonderful. That's wonderful.
And that's what I know you got people that want to go work on about their business and things like that, and hopefully we'll know as soon as we can. But it's been sent to histology, and histology is a study of tissue. So what they do is they'll put it in some formalin or some type of solution, probably formalin, and then they'll what they do called mount it. They'll take microscopic slices of it, and then they're able to look at it under a microscope and determine exactly what it is. And then they'll look if it is or it isn't. They'll determine if they need to do DNA or anything like that.
Well, and it sounds like if they're willing to go to those links, then it's definitely something that they weren't able to easily rule out as human or non-human, correct?
Right. Well, they just want to make sure they're 100% on something that's this important.
Yes, sir.
We don't want to just do half-ass anything.
Yeah.
So to make sure that we are 100%, like I say, I told you yesterday, we're going to make sure it gets up there and gets ascertained exactly what it is, and that's what the doctor's doing. And as soon as I hear something, I will let you know.
Well, thank you so much. You guys have been wonderful to work with.
Well, we work for you guys. We work for the families. We're not law enforcement anyway. We work for the families, and that's why we're not law enforcement, so we can work with the families. And we just want to do what's right and get this case solved and make sure we do it 100% the best way we can. But you can rest assured that the sample did make it to the office, and it has been examined, and they're just doing further research on it.
Wonderful. Well, sir, have a wonderful evening, and thank you so much.
Yes, sir. If I can do anything, let me know.
Yes, sir.
Well, that's pretty interesting. It happened right when we're talking about this.
Good timing.
Very good timing. So, I mean, you've heard it all, listeners. You heard exactly from the medical examiner's office. They're breaking it down.
Yeah.
It's under microscopes as we speak, and hopefully we'll have an answer in a couple of days. So it sounds like they really want to take their time with this.
Yeah. And I mean, to me, I like that because, I mean, for multiple reasons, but most anything that I've seen off this property that's been sent out, whether it be a bone, I mean, it's immediately like, that's this bone, or that's this or that, or that's not human. They're taking it all the way on this one, which is pretty interesting to me.
Yeah. It's very hopeful.
Yeah.
It's very hopeful. And the mystery continues.
The mystery continues. Dun, dun, dun. Stay tuned for the next episode.
All right. Toby, it's been wonderful.
Amazing.
It's been an amazing experience. You're an amazing guy. We like what all you're about, and your family's amazing, and all the guys that work with you. They don't even seem like they work with you. They seem like they're all like brothers.
No, we all work together. Nobody works for me. We all work together.
Yeah. And
And your
shows.
wife is amazing as well.
She's
so
awesome.
thank you so much for everything this week. We are just can't believe how hospitable
And
everyone has been.
And to our listeners, we videotaped everything that we've done for the last couple of days. So we're going to start providing some of those videos on our website, and we'll let you know when it's going to be done and how you're going to be able to have access to it, so you can come along and see what we did. So
Thank you, Toby.
thank you.
Thank you guys so much.
Awesome. A few days after we left Battlesprings Ranch, Toby received the results from the medical examiner's office.
Toby is now going to walk us through what was told to him by the medical examiner's office, as well as revealing a significant development in the case.
So, Toby, let's talk about how we have this thing that looks like a tongue. Tell us a little bit about what you did after we gave it to the medical examiner and he went off and dropped it off to the medical examiner's office up in Oklahoma City. To kind of take us through those steps and what happened after that.
The medical examiner's office, I mean, they're covering everything for the entire state of Oklahoma. So everything from items like what we find to be tested to if someone passes away. So it took a little bit of convincing to have them expedite it for us, but it was such a big case. They did that, and we got a phone call that it was actually fungus, which surprised a lot of us. And I'd sent that photo to some of my friends that are dental surgeons, biologists, and everyone came back human tongue. You know, you and I had spoke, and Cindy had spoke, and I'd spoken to Maureen as well as Matt. Okay, let's think about getting a second opinion, just because of so much that has gone on with this case since the beginning, that there's no question that this is a fungus, which didn't make a lot of sense to us. But honestly, like, there being a tongue 5 to 6 feet deep in the pit also was kind of crazy. So it was very interesting. And the people who had handled it, I mean, it did not feel like fungus. We couldn't tear it apart. I went up and got the rest of the sample that they had. And so what they did is they had to do histology on this tongue. So histology, for your listeners, so you don't have to Google it, is they take a real fine, like, razor blade, and they cut the tissue in half, and they put it on a microscope, on a slide, look into it, and determine what that is, whether it's animal, whether it's human, whether it's plant matter. They did that and it came back to be fungus. I actually I found a fungus identification group on Facebook that has like 36,000 followers, and sent some of the administrators photos and said, hey, what kind of fungus is this? And everyone came back and said that's not a fungus that we've ever seen. I talked with the medical examiner's office to release the rest of that to me. So I went to Oklahoma City, picked that up. This is the crazy thing about this case. I go to pick that tissue up. The girl, I guess a medical examiner, she's an assistant or an investigator who brought it to me. I kind of like apologized to her a little bit. I'm like, hey, look, I know this kind of sounds weird, but we're going to get a second opinion just because of how big this case is. And she goes, oh yeah, no, I know. I went to school with Molly. And I was like, of course she did. In Oklahoma City, and being the medical examiner, went to school in Southern Oklahoma with Molly, and she was actually one of her classmates.
Wow.
So they give you a little, in fact, I'm looking at it right now on my desk. They give you a little, kind of like a change of custody release. And this was the original paperwork that they filled out when it came in, and it's listed as UIU tissue. So I've never seen an acronym like that before, and asked the girl, I was like, what's that? What's that stand for? It was something to the degree of unidentified individual unknown, I think is what they said. And they said if it was male, there'd be an M at the end. If it was female, there'd be a F at the end of that. And I was like, well, why would y'all pick that? And she goes, oh no, we thought that was human when it came in. So it did make me feel pretty good that even the medical examiners, from a physical touch, from looking at it, could not rule it out as human and actually believed that it was human. I put that in a cooler, took it to a close buddy of mine. In Oklahoma, a lot of times you want to figure something out, you go to a vet, and we've got some of the best vets in the country. So my friend actually has another company called PhoneScope where they can actually record what they're doing through the microscope on an iPhone. So I was like, okay, this would be perfect because we can do the histology on it, and we can also send that off for second opinions through the videos. As soon as we got into it, and he sliced it, and it did not look like it was fungus when he cut it, and we put it on a slide, and I took freshman biology in college, and I could pick out as soon as it came up on that slide that it was some type of plant matter and probably was fungus from the way that the fibers were laying out. So we really quickly, within 5 minutes, identified that it was not any type of animal or human, and it was kind of honestly a little bit of a shock just from how similar this tissue looked to being a human tongue. So that's kind of where we're at. So we were able to exclude that was a human tongue. We still do believe that there are human remains in that hole. And we can talk about who's now involved here in a minute whenever you're ready.
Yeah. Yeah, let's talk about that.
It's been a big week.
It's been a big week. And, let's talk a little bit about what happened after that and how you'd gotten a call. Who'd you get a call from? Because there's another agency involved now, and there's a new investigation that's happening. And let's talk about how they're getting involved and what they said to you.
So there were lots of moving parts when you get into something like this. And obviously this case is pretty high profile. And there's been lots of questions, concerns in the past, whether they were valid or not, about law enforcement, how it's been handled. We know early on it definitely was not handled correctly. I did get information from a source of mine that there was a group or an individual that wanted to talk to me, so I reached out to them, and it was Bureau of Indian Affairs, which I was thoroughly excited to speak with. This gentleman let me know he's a special agent investigator and let me know that they're taking over the case completely. They had already pulled the files from FBI. They were going to be notifying OSBI or had already notified them. I actually got to personally meet this investigator, and he is just professional as it comes. And it really was kind of, we have not got anything across the finish line, but to have them come in, and it's not just, you want to talk a little bit about what Bureau of Indian Affairs is and what they specialize in?
Yeah, let's talk about, Darcy Scoons, who's a private investigator who's also Native American, Indigenous. We spoke to her, I think, on the second or third podcast.
Yeah, we got in touch with her before we even started the podcast because she was focusing on investigating Indigenous murders. And she said to me, we definitely have to get the BIA involved. They're the only ones that are going to be able to take this over the finish line. And she had said that over a year ago. So we're really happy that the BIA is involved.
Yeah, and what they bring to the table, they're a federal organization like the FBI, but for Native Americans, and they have an enormous amount of resources, just like a federal agency has. What BIA brings to this is a higher profile, and also the fact that they have all these resources, and they already have a battle plan. They've been looking at this case for a while from the sidelines. So they obviously have been watching every step of the way over the last 7 months, and they feel like they need to intercede and bring their expertise and their resources to this. So it's a huge victory for this case because it's been passed around like a hot potato from all these different law enforcement agencies, from the smallest ones, the town ones, to Wilson, to Carter County, to Love County, to OSBI, and also FBI, U.S. Marshals were involved. But now we have a dedicated agency that wants to solve this case, and they want to bring it over the goal line. And we're very happy to have them involved. We spoke to Paula this morning about it, and the sense of relief in her voice when she found out was huge. Because then she said, now I can just sit back and relax and let these people take over. Because she feels like it's going to get the right amount of attention and expertise towards it. So, and also even some of the officers, I'm sure OSBI, it's been an albatross around their neck. And the volunteer officer, Jackie Bates, who's been working on this case for a few years now.
And Jackie's been working so hard.
Exactly.
He's been working so hard on this case. And it's good to have someone else take a look at it now and give him a break.
And fresh eyes.
Yeah, he's been working way too hard.
Yeah, and he's been doing it primarily because he's motivated by Paula. He was more concerned about finding Molly and Colt, and I think one begets the other, but I think he was driven by that. I think it's an enormous victory for this case. Based upon what your interaction with him and what we're hearing, they're going to do what needs to be done. They're going to do searches. They're going to they're going to re-interview people. They're going to reverse engineer this whole case and do what exactly needs to be done.
And I think it's important too because Molly is Chickasaw and there needs to be more light on these Indigenous cases. And BIA, that's what they do. And I don't think a lot of people even know who they are.
Pound for pound, like, I don't know this for a fact, but just being with my different interactions with different law enforcement agencies around the country and some places in the world, they've got good funding. And what is neat about this too, I mean, you look at your local law enforcement, you look at state law enforcement, right? Like even OSBI is a great organization. Their specialty, I mean, they're working a lot of different type of cases. So everything from stolen cars in some cases that might have something to do with something higher profile, to murder cases, to missing persons cases. And they've got a fairly large caseload. What I like about BIA is this is like their focus. This is part of how they were established, was going out and locating human remains as well as solving cold cases. The level of professionalism this gentleman has, it made me feel very, very comfortable. He was not interested in rumors. He was not interested in chasing rabbits. It was, we're going to start back from the beginning. We're going to look at this logically. I mean, this guy had gone all the way to looking back to the date they went missing, the humidity level, the temperature, was it overcast? There was a crescent moon. How would someone act in that way? I mean, just really professional. And I'm not saying that others haven't done that, but I do think that they're going to be able to bring the resources. I mean, even air cover. I mean, you're talking about a group that I mean, this is what they do. So I'm very, very thrilled about it as well. My thing is kind of like what you talked about, Jackie. Whether they find out who did it or not, I mean, I've been focused on, if there's something on our ranch that can provide closure, I want to make sure that we put the resources into doing that. Otherwise, that kind of was hanging over me for quite some time. Now it feels like I can kind of take that weight off my shoulders, that little weight off my shoulders of our property, that it'll be handled by someone else. And I think they're pretty confident that there is some human remains in that hole, or it could be a shirt or a boot that has human odor, but that also doesn't mean that it's Molly or Colt, and that could lead us somewhere else too. But I do feel that a lot of what we did over the last few weeks as a group, I mean, this team you put together, I mean, I mentioned it earlier in the podcast, I mean, it just worked. I mean, this is the type of team I think we could go into most situations and do very well together. And I think a lot of this where we're at today has to do with some of the things, some of the bushes we shook up to see what would come out. And I think a lot of this has to do with you guys bringing light to this case on a larger level and going through all the good things that have happened with the case, as well as the unfortunate things that happened in the case. And this guy's listening to the entire podcast too, so it's neat. Like I said earlier, we didn't get anything across the goal line by any means, but I think everyone that has been involved probably feels pretty good about having this organization come in and take over this case.
Well, I think what's key is, and this has always been our experience, is whenever you put energy towards something, positive energy towards something, and you actually do something, you put action to that energy, more than likely something's going to happen. We didn't find what we thought was a human tongue. We vetted that out, but we also know that area still needs to be dug, and it still needs to be explored. And based upon the conversations that you've had with the BI agent, he feels the same way. And he feels like, and according to what we hope they do, is they go out and they check out all these locations that have been mentioned and explored in this way. And I think that's what really needs to be done.
Well, there's just so many locations that have never been looked at before that have definitely had cadaver dogs hit on and are viable locations. So someone with a new perspective needs to take a full look at this case and dig deep in, really start eliminating theories and eliminating suspects and focusing in on theories that have never been explored before.
Well, even interviews. I mean, there's interviews that never been done, right? I mean, and I know this from talking to, I mean, even our previous ranch owner that owned the ranch. She had sent me photos of one of the suspects on the property during 2013. It was April, but like no one had those photos, right? And so like she had never been interviewed before, and he owned the property then. Now, from what we know loosely is that the car crashed and that they were in an area for a specific amount of time, but what happened to them after. But this was, you mentioned kind of ground zero. It's definitely close to ground zero, and the landowner hadn't made hadn't even been questioned about what did you see? Was there things that you noticed during this time that were different? And they weren't out there very much, but the woman did tell me that they were, I think I've mentioned this before, that they were concerned for their safety when they were on their own property, right? It's pretty exciting.
Yeah, and it's not just them. It wasn't just them, because the people who own the property were some of the oil wells on, and one particular which a dog hit on twice, and which is in close proximity on Long Hollow Road, not too far from one of the houses that is in question. She said that they were afraid to go to their property. They had put up cameras near the well, and they were destroyed repeatedly, and then they would put stuff on where they had padlocks that were crazy glued, so they couldn't open them. So they didn't even... You're laughing because did that happen to you?
Well, we put up a camera at our gate, and it was a very expensive camera that was hidden inside a box. And I told the guy that installed it that, hey, we need to put something in front of it because it was going to get shot. And he said that in his 20 years of installing these type of devices, they've never been shot before. And 2 days later, it was shot with a 22. So yeah, but I can understand how some people might have concerns about those things. I mean, there's oil wells out there that have rattlesnakes put in little boxes because they didn't want these guys driving down that area. I mean, it's a different area.
Your front gate literally opens up to Long Hollow Road.
Yes, it does. Yeah.
So it's like, can't get any closer than that. Anyway, we're really excited about these new developments, and we're hoping that it goes into overdrive right now. And I know we have to be patient because they're going to have, I'm sure they have a lot of information they're going to sift through, but it sounds like they've been doing some preliminary work beforehand.
It sounds like they've done a lot of work, actually. I was extremely impressed with the amount of knowledge even just about our ranch in general, let alone the general area. And one of the things that did make me feel a little bit good, that hole has been weighing on me for now 2 years, because this is the first time we got a chance to actually properly try to excavate it because we believe something was there. One of the comments that was made to me after this discussion was, hey, we know y'all did that privately and that's great, but if you keep digging, that's not going to be good. They want to bring out their resources and do it. And the reason I'll state that is, at that confidence level, I could actually be in trouble for going now and trying to dig in that hole. So that gives me a good feeling that there's something there. BIA is telling me not to dig anymore.
Well, that's good. That's good.
Great.
That's the way it should be. Mm-hmm. It should be.
Exactly. You shouldn't have to do the dig. They should be doing it. So it's wonderful that this is happening. We're really excited about these new developments. You have been instrumental in all of this and amazing. And we are so thrilled to have met you and to have been able to have been working with you on this. It has been a wonderful experience. And look at the movement we've gotten. And I really believe, like Rob said, you put all of this positive energy towards something and have pure motives, and things do happen.
They do. And I'm glad that there's folks out there like you guys that, this is, getting to spend time with you guys, knowing this is your passion, this is your love, being able to help bring closure, help justice. That's, if I was going to describe both of you after meeting with y'all and spending lots of time, the quest for justice is such a foundation of what you guys do that it made me very proud to work with you guys and get to know you as well.
Same here.
Same
right
here.
back at
Thank
you. Because you're, like I said before, and I don't know who would put their money where their mouth is in this situation, but you've been doing it from day one, and not many people do stuff like that and overextend themselves. And you're a relatively new resident there, so you're shaking things up. And you're shaking things up in a good way because it's a beautiful area. And what you have there at Battlesprings Ranch is nothing short of like a little Shangri-La. And the fact that it's marred in this controversy and all this ugliness it needs to be cleaned up.
Well, and too, I kind of talked about in a previous podcast about the people in Love County in southern Oklahoma. When you listen to a podcast like this, it does, you're getting a perspective of some people that have done some really bad things, but that's a minority, right? And we talked, you mentioned that on one of your podcasts about law enforcement and how there are law enforcement officers that are bad, but that's a minority, right? And the majority of people in southern Oklahoma, we moved our family here because of the people of southern Oklahoma, and they're good people. And I think you got to meet some of the locals and understand it has its own culture, just like everywhere. New York City has its own culture, but New York City is also full of wonderful people. And there's some crazy ones in there too. I just do want to state that because it has been I mean, this place is home for us, and we'll be buried on that ranch someday. Hopefully not anytime soon. But that's how much we love and respect this area.
Oh, the people were wonderful. And that was what we were really happy about, because last time we were there, it was very tense and stressful, and we didn't really get to meet the locals. And this time we did. And what a wonderful group of people that we met, and so enthusiastic about everything, and just really good people. And I want people to understand that too, that just because there's a few bad apples in this area and there's been some corruption and there's been some things that have happened, it doesn't mean that all the people there are like that, because they're definitely not. And they definitely want this to end and to get their home back, so that they don't have to feel like people looking at their home, that they have this darkness over it.
Thank you so much, Toby. And
Of course.
you're on this journey with us, and we're thankful for it. And we're hopefully all this new movement brings answers to this horrible.
We're here to help, and anything that we can assist with, you just let us know.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
All right, take care, buddy.
All right, guys.
Bye.
We'll chat soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Next time on Partners in True Crime.
Our investigation into the case of Molly Miller and Colt Haynes continues. We're going to be sorting through tips, and we are going to be speaking to new experts in law enforcement and the legal field from around the country, who will hopefully help us unravel this mystery.
If you or anyone you know is suffering from a methamphetamine addiction, please contact the American Meth Addiction Hotline.
If you or anyone you know has been the victim of sexual abuse, please contact the National Domestic Violence Hotline.
For any tips relating to the disappearance of Molly Miller and Colt Haynes, please contact 833-4-MOLLY and Colt, and they will be directed to the proper law enforcement agency.
All rights reserved. This has been a production of 722 Media Content. Please visit our website, where you can subscribe to the podcast, find show notes, and listen to Vi's original song, Take Me Back, written for Molly Miller.